God bless America. Hello, everybody. I am the Talk Radio Protege. This is the Protege program. Thank you all for joining me. You're watching this video on Friday, which means the weekend is almost here. The Christmas weekend is almost here. Extra reason for celebration. One quick announcement before we get into the video. The videos that you'll be watching on Monday and Tuesday, Christmas Day and the day after, are going to be videos that I record this date on this Friday. So we'll be lagging a little bit behind. I imagine there's going to be a big news roundup that comes on Wednesday. So make sure you subscribe and hit the bell for notifications so that you don't miss out on those news items. Now, on to the story for today. CNN published a column on Thursday of this week that said, enjoy your tax cuts while they last. And I decided to look into it a little bit, and I am so glad that I did, because this gives me an opportunity to talk about something that I learned in school that is now going to become useful to me, that I think, in my personal opinion, everybody should know this stuff. So, first of all, hell froze over yesterday. CNN said that a lot of households under the GOP plan, which President Trump is set to sign into law this week, will see a lower tax bill in the next several years. CNN just admitted that something the president did is good for Americans. Wow. Just wow. I actually was surprised to see this. Is one of the reasons I decided to talk about this column. However, they never let an opportunity to attack this tax plan go to waste. Here's the thing, the column says, after 2025, all individual tax cuts are set to expire. At the same time, corporate rate cuts are made permanent under the bill. So we're already gunning for this class warfare again. The rich get to keep their tax cuts, and yours don't. You don't get to keep your tax cuts, so you're getting spanked for the sake of the rich. Now, the reason why these individual tax cuts are set to expire is a very specific reason. It's because Republicans made individual tax cuts temporary so they could meet budget rules that let them pass their tax overhaul with no Democrat votes. And that's a very good thing, by the way. It's good that the Democrats didn't get to touch this bill, and I'll tell you why. If Democrats had got to lay their hands on this bill, it wouldn't be a conservative tax reform. It's not a super conservative tax reform, but it's better than anything that the Democrats would have touched. Any tax plan the Democrats touch has a name, and it's called the progressive income tax, which is where we take from the rich to redistribute to the poor. That is the progressive income tax, in a nutshell. It's communism. And that's why the Republicans didn't want Democrat votes, because anything that a Democrat was going to vote for was going to be communism. In this day and age, that's just the Democrat Party. They say that a future Congress won't let middle-class tax cuts expire. Recent precedents like the oft-extended Bush tax cuts, which we don't actually hear about in the news, it's kind of strange, suggest they may be right. Still, there's zero guarantee of that. After all, a lot can change over 8 years. Yes, the Democrats could take over, become infinitely more communist, and decide to let the tax cuts expire, but that's hearsay. I wanted to talk about this phenomenon really quick. We have these contrived Senate rules which demand that individual tax cuts have an expiration date, which means that Democrats have avoided for decades the consequences of raising taxes on the lower and middle class. All they have to do is allow the tax cuts to expire and then say, see, it was the Republicans that put this expiration date on. They're the ones that are increasing your taxes, which is not actually true. All of the Senate rules appear to be in place to negatively affect Republican plans. But that's just hearsay. The real reason that tax cuts on individuals have to be given an expiration date is because we can't do spending cuts. Washington, D.C. is awful at spending cuts. And the reason is The reason is they don't want to do spending cuts. And they don't want to do spending cuts because when the government has less money, spends less money, they're less powerful. And of course, nobody in the swamp wants the government to be less powerful. So we don't do spending cuts. At least we don't try to do spending cuts. We don't try our hardest. We don't try our hardest to do spending cuts because when we do spending cuts, we attack the most high-profile dollars first. And what are the most high-profile dollars? Welfare, Medicare, Medicaid. I've talked about this in previous video. You can't do tax or spending cuts because you attack the high-profile dollars first. And when you attack the high-profile dollars first, you're perceived as screwing the poor. And you're not allowed to screw the poor. They're screwed enough as it is. So spending cuts off the table. We can't do spending cuts because we can't make the government less powerful, but we don't want to tell people that. So we do spending cuts by attacking the high-profile welfare dollars first, which is unpalatable, so we don't do spending cuts at all. That being said, the reason that they go into this, there's another reason you could end up with a tax increase after 2025, and then they talk about the stealth tax increase, and they talk about the stealth tax increase informed of a slower inflation measure called chain CPI that will apply to inflation-adjusted parts of the tax code. And inflation is, in my opinion, a difficult pill to swallow. It's a difficult concept to understand. But I want to attempt to explain it as best as I can here for you today. The upshot for tax filers is this, says this tax expert. Many tax breaks will be worth less over time than they are under current tax law, and people will gradually be pushed into higher tax brackets over time. We really need to talk about that. First of all, tax breaks will be worth less over time than they are under current law, and that is true because of a concept called the time value of money. If you've never heard of this, listen closely. This is incredibly important. The time value of money says that a set quantity of money now is worth more than the same set quantity of money in the future. A loose quantity of money, in other words, for example, a quantity of money that you give to an agency so that they can profit is worth more in the future than it is now. Money that you loan to someone is worth more in the future than it is now. Think about this. Someone asks you, I want to give you $100. I can give that money to you now, or I can give that to you in 10 years. When is that $100 worth more? Well, it's worth more right now. It's not going to increase in value in 10 years. It's still going to be $100. So it doesn't matter if I have it now or later. I may as well have it now. It's worth more now because time has value. Money over time has value. Money that does not increase over time is more valuable now than it is later. Now, let us say that you give some money to a person so that they can earn money. Like you give some money to a bank. You give the bank some of your money. They make loans with that money and they earn money. Therefore, when you come to ask for your money back, there's going to be more. They're going to have earned money and they're going to give you a little bit of it. Now, banks are bad examples because we don't use banks to allow our money to grow. We put money in a bank so that we don't have immediate access to it. A better example is an investment company. A company that's going to take a little bit more risk with your money so that you can earn a little bit more with it. You can safely earn good returns on money that you give to an investment agency. But let's say you give an investment agency $1,000 and they go and they make a lot of money with it. They're going to give you back a lot more money because your money to them was worth a lot more in the moment that you gave it to them than it was for them to not have your money. So you giving them your money, you gave them profit. They're going to then give you a return on your investment in their company. You could think of it in a more direct sense, that you invest in a company. Say you know a friend that is going to do a startup business and they're going to sell widgets, and you give them money to help them get started. Say you give them $1,000. Because you've helped them to earn money, you can expect that they might give you a return on your investment of $1,000. They might give you some money back. They may give you back dividends over time. They may pay back your $1,000 with interest in order to, perhaps you bought equity in their startup with that $1,000, and maybe they want to buy that equity back. They'll, of course, owe you a little bit more money because you've helped them to grow their business. That's the way that investment works. That's the way the time value of money works. Now, there's another way that the time value of money impacts wages, and it is through inflation. And inflation is a kind of nebulous concept. I'll explain it as best I can. And I need to start it this way. We live in a society that on the regular produces effectively infinite amounts of things. If there were only one light bulb in the entire world, it would be incredibly valuable. You couldn't purchase that light bulb. There would not be enough money to purchase that light bulb. But there's not. There's effectively infinite light bulbs, because we never stop making light bulbs. There always seems to be light bulbs on the shelf at Walmart. It doesn't cost an arm and a leg to make a light bulb, and we can mass produce light bulbs. So they're not worth a lot. They're worth a few dollars a piece. Because we, on the regular, produce an infinite amount of things, naturally, the things that we cannot produce an infinite amount of, or the things that let me say this way. The things that we can't produce an infinite amount of, or the things that we can't produce very quickly, are worth a lot more money, like your phones, or your cars, or your precious items, handcrafted things that are made with a lot of expertise and a lot of time is put in to make crafting a thing. Those are worth a lot of money. There's also things that can't be produced, like precious metals, gold, silver, titanium, I believe, is one. Maybe it's not. Platinum is another one. There are precious stones that we can't produce. Those things are worth a lot of money because their quantity is not expanding at the rate that mass-produced things expand. We also mass-produce dollars. And because we mass-produce... Well, I skipped a step. Because we mass-produce things, their value is small relative to things that can't be produced as fast, or we can't produce as much of, or can't be produced, period. Like light bulbs. Light bulbs are cheap, especially relative to phones, because we can produce light bulbs much faster and much cheaper than we can produce phones. Now, we produce dollars as well. And we produce dollars because of deficit spending. That's a discussion for another time. We produce dollars, but the value of a dollar is not measured the way that the value of a light bulb is measured. We measure the value of a light bulb in dollars, but we don't measure the value of dollars in dollars. So it's hard. That makes it harder to explain inflation. Inflation, though, I'm sure you've seen the photos of diners that advertised hamburgers for 25 cents. Today, a hamburger is worth $5. That's inflation. Inflation is the amount of dollars relative to the amount of things. If there are less dollars than there are things, then things will be cheap. if there are more dollars than there are things, then things will be expensive, relative to fewer dollars. This is why it's excuse me. This is why it is illegal to destroy dollars. It's illegal to reduce the quantity of dollars. Imagine if someone took the national debt and just burned that number of dollars. You can imagine how valuable a dollar would become. You can imagine how cheap things might become if we could destroy $20 trillion. Now, and this is why this is one reason people will gradually be pushed into higher tax brackets over time, because of inflation. And the reason that happens is like this. Your job is pretty much a set quantity. Your job is, let's put a number to it. Your job is 10. Your income, your wages is a flux quantity. It changes over time, but for the sake of this example, let's say that your income is a set quantity. Let's say your income is also 10. Your living standard is supposed to be a set quantity. The way that we view our lives, we want our job and our living standard to be set quantities. We want our wages to be a flux quantity so that our living standard can change over time, can be a flux quantity, but we want our job and our living standard to be set quantities as long as our wages are a set quantity. But because of inflation, inflation means that your wages shrinks without the number shrinking. Your wages, your job is 10, your wages are 10, your living standard is 10, but because of inflation, your effective wages shrinks, but stays at 10. Therefore, your living standard is going to shrink, is going to become a different number. Let's say it becomes 9. It changed. Now, 10 of wages can only buy 9 of living standard. It used to buy 10, but now it buys 9. Therefore, we're going to demand of our job that our wages increase so that we can restore a living standard to 10. We don't want 9, we want 10. So we're going to demand that our wages goes up. This is how inflation pushes people into higher tax brackets. It's not that your wages are not going to change, but you're going to be pushed into these higher tax brackets. It's that inflation is going to happen. Your dollars going to become worth less stuff. Therefore, you're going to demand of your employer more wages. Therefore, you're going to drift into those higher tax brackets. This is how the economy works. This is how inflation works. This is the society that we live in. This is reality, whether Democrats pass a tax plan or Republicans pass a tax plan. This is only news because people do not get educated in inflation, the time value of money, and these kinds of money managing things that people really ought to know. You ought not to be able to graduate from college until you understand the time value of money, which helps you understand inflation and helps you understand investments and helps you understand a lot of things that make your life a lot easier in the later years. That's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you liked it. If you did, maybe you leave a like, maybe you subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications so that you don't miss a single video, because I'm uploading every weekday. Thus far, I can't say thus far without fail anymore, because I missed last Thursday. But I hope that you'll come back and tune in for more. Enjoy your weekend. I hope it's a great one. Until next time, good night, Merry Christmas, and God bless.